One of the things that I'm also concerned about right now is the fact that Gavin Newsom has said that they will not have like pesky environmental regulations get in the way of rebuilding fast. And I feel like that is going to make the problem worse down the line. And I am genuinely fearful of this. While I understand that rebuilding fast is very important, I think this is the moment where you're supposed to take extra care and consideration over those environmental regulations and try to make sure that everything that is being rebuilt is hardened so that you don't actually have this exact same issue a couple years down the line. That's what's so crazy about this entire process that I can't comprehend. Like people are talking about like cutting red tape in an effort to rebuild as fast as possible. And I'm sure that that's what's inevitably going to happen. But the lack of appropriate regulation and implementation of safety measures ahead of this wildfire is the reason why the wildfire damaged and destroyed 12,000 structures in the state of California so far. So I don't know. Because on the one hand, I understand the necessity for rebuilding fast. I mean, people lost their homes. They want to build as quickly as possible, and they want to go back to their homes as quickly as possible and return to normalcy as quickly as possible. There's going to be aftershocks of this in the housing market, and it's already started. You have landlords and massive real estate owners using this opportunity to engage in illegal price gouging, increasing the price points of single family homes by upwards of 100%, like totally illegal, by the way. And I think a smart prosecutor would make short work of people that are trying to engage in this sort of thing and could potentially even maintain a lot of charity. This would be good politically. You know what I mean? This would reinstill faith in the criminal justice system in the eyes of many people. Are you worried about your property? Not necessarily, but, you know, like I said, the way I think about it is if the fire got to where I am at, that would mean millions displaced at that point. Millions. I think a lot of the money, considering the damage is like upwards of $130 billion, according to Wells Fargo estimates, a lot of the money is going to be spent on rebuilding and rebuilding fast. But I think extra money should be spent on hardening the infrastructure, putting these goddamn power lines underneath. I just don't know how we can sit around and watch these kinds of wildfires occur over and over again in this state and not do something about the infrastructure spending. And if people don't actually do that, if our government doesn't actually do that, this is just going to keep happening over and over again. Although some of the massively consequential wildfires might have started, like the Palisades one, might have started as a consequence of reignition potentially, according to the Washington Post article that we read. There are others that definitely did start due to, and there are plenty of historic examples of wildfires starting due to not moving our power lines underground because it's far too costly for the utility companies. Yeah. Bernie's federal firefight expansion cost only $19 billion. If you want an idea of just how much not doing the Green New Deal was a disaster, exactly. It's truly frustrating to watch this happen in my state when it just seemingly happens consistently over and over again. And virtually no one wants to spend that upfront money because all the tax breaks that we offer the utilities companies, all the subsidies that we give to the utility companies go back to stock buybacks rather than going into infrastructure hardening. And this is a age-old phenomena that keeps reoccurring over and over again. One example that comes to mind is something as simple as like ISPs getting billions of dollars in the 90s, billions of dollars of tax breaks in the 90s, specifically to improve bandwidth, expand it, improve it, and offer better services, and then never doing it for 4 decades, refusing to do it for 4 decades. And if you don't actually have the regulatory agencies come back and pounce on these major providers, whether it be ISPs or utilities, and demand that they actually follow through on the tax benefits that they were given, then why would they? The 1996 Telecommunications Act basically paid for fiber across the majority of the US, and they took the dollars and ran. Yep. So many of the problems that we talk about on a day-to-day basis on this broadcast have solutions that require competent governance, a mechanism of enforcement. Those mechanisms exist. we just never use them. We never utilize them against these major corporations. The government is completely servile to corporate interests. So it's basically used as a way to funnel tax dollars directly back to these corporations and never in a million years enforce the appropriate regulatory pushback that's necessary to make these companies by force do what benefits public interest. And I know for a fact Trump is not going to do anything about it, especially as the Republican Party is currently talking about potentially placing conditions on aid to California. That's right. No conditions. These animals would condition aid to fellow American victims of natural disaster, but never to a foreign ally committing genocide. Monstrous cretins. No conditions to Israel, but conditions to fellow Californians who are suffering from this natural disaster.
Are you open to providing aid to California without any conditions at all?
I think we've got to have a serious conversation about that. Obviously, there's been water resource mismanagement, forest.
They're like, yeah, we'll give you conditions as long as, you open up new, as long as you dam the rivers, redirect water, continue polluting the environment, help out some of our big donors in the agribusiness, and ruin the environment further, accelerating the conditions in which climate change gets worse and worse, which then cause these once-in-a-lifetime natural disasters to happen over and over again. What do they mean by conditions? I mean, one can only speculate at this point what those conditions are, but it seems like the fact that he's talking about something that Donald Trump has talked about, the Sacramento Delta being redirected into Southern California specifically for agribusiness, seems like that's the condition that they want to implement.
Management, mistakes, all sorts of problems. And it does come down to leadership, and it appears to us that state and local leaders were derelict in their duty in many respects. So that's something that has to be factored in. I think there should probably be conditions on that aid. That's my personal view. We'll see what the consensus is. I haven't had a chance to socialize that with any of the members over the weekend because we've all been very busy, but it'll be part of the discussion for sure.
What about the debt limit increase? What about tying the debt limit increase to it?
There's some discussion about that, but we'll see where it goes.
Ugh. This is absolutely unacceptable. Like, I feel like if we had a normal and competent government, and if we had a normal and competent population, they would look at someone like this and they would punish them. They would be like, this person is never going to be reelected ever again. The party would suffer consequences, penalties for behaving like this. But Americans are so polarized and so primed into hyper-focusing on DEI and random nonsensical bullshit that they just don't even understand what this demon is saying here. California sends billions more to the federal treasury than it gets back in taxes. Cal exit now. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I mean, obviously it's not going to happen, but is this after Hurricane Sandy 2? A representative from Louisiana does this after a state has received multiple necessary bailouts. Yeah, Felix also had some words on this. An opposition party that had an ounce of integrity would possibly be able to make an issue over the speaker putting more conditions on aid to Americans suffering from a horrific calamity than he ever would for Israel. Globally, can you point out to a single competent government that works on behalf of public interest and not their own power? I can. You're just not going to like the answer that I'm going to give you, so I'm just not going to give you an answer on that question because it is endlessly frustrating. There are plenty of governments that actually try to do their very best with the limited resources that they have or the expansive resources that they have. What we previously wrote about and talked about and considered as far as like applying the shock doctrine, right, to territories that America controls that we exploit, such as Puerto Rico, we do to ourselves in mainland United States as well. Because as profit rates decline, corporate actors will always look to squeeze out what remains of said profits from anywhere and everywhere they can. And yeah, aside from the endless exploitation of the global south, there is always going to be some room for further exploitation, even in mainland United States. Yes, I'm giving a shout out to Naomi Klein, the author of the famous book that I'm referencing, Shock Doctrine. I think the shock doctrine no longer simply applies to America's foreign adversaries and America's foreign allies even, that they want to steal resources from, but instead to mainland United States as well. Naomi, of course, featured the impact of the Katrina disaster in her book as well. Having said that, I think that there are more and more cases of opportunists taking advantage of crisis like this to further accelerate the public-private partnership and take advantage of crisis like this. Authorities warn of looting and scams in the wake of California wildfires.
Are warning looters looking to take advantage of the disaster, they will be prosecuted. But we're also seeing so many people come together to help and lift each other up.
Yeah, Robin, good morning. Look, that support is on full display here. This is the parking lot. It is completely covered with donations here. This has been a community-run grassroots effort to help people in need. And to give you an idea of the scope of this, a lot of people lost everything that they had, and everyone that they know lost everything that they had. So this is a way that the community is just trying to get them the necessities. This morning, the Los Angeles County Sheriff with an urgent warning to people who are taking advantage of a desperate situation.
Don't do it. Whether it is burglary, looting, or any other crime, whether it's a scam of some kind that you're conjuring up to make money off of the poor people that have been involved in this.
Officials warning burglars, looters, and scammers that they will be prosecuted if they take advantage of people who've been through this tragedy. A curfew order has been established from dusk till dawn in the affected fire zones to protect homes. Authorities increasing patrols and deploying the National Guard to assist. One suspect arrested after they were caught burglarizing a home in Malibu, disguised as a firefighter.
All right, half of the videos so far have been dedicated to the, a good part of it is dedicated to the community rebuilding and the efforts to help one another. There's been one guy that was portrayed himself as a firefighter to engage in looting inside of Malibu, which is psychotic. There's a total of, I believe at this point, 29 arrests that have occurred where they were arrested under suspicion of looting. Not every single one of those guys were, interested in looting, most likely. Don't know how many of them have been released so far, how many of them are being prosecuted. But having said that, once again, I will repeat that Los Angeles County, the greater Los Angeles area, is 18 million, almost 19 million people. Okay? Yeah, there are people who will probably get arrested for curfew violations as well, and not necessarily for looting. But let's see how much they talk about the scams and what the nature of these scams are, especially considering that, as I've repeated time and time again, the real looting begins when the insurance company denies your claims. The real looting begins when private equity comes in and tries to purchase your lot that is burned into ashes for a very comfortable price point, much lower than the actual market value. The real looting begins when corporate landlords decide to engage in the act of price gouging, the illegal act of price gouging. This is what I try to reiterate. This is not a defense of a opportunistic charlatan who is so desperate in terms of his own material conditions that he is deciding to engage in a crisis opportunity to make money for themselves by going into a Malibu mansion that hasn't been burned into the ground and try to steal a television. The price point of such things is so marginal and so inconsequential when you compare it to the real looting, the legalized version of said looting. Look, see, this is what I mean. Look. So you defending looting, they should loot your rich crib. Just example, at HasanAbi, wish no harm. I'm not defending this. This is an indefensible act. Everybody understands that this is an indefensible act. But if you have smoke for this person, okay, then you should understand that the ginormous amount of looting that has already taken place through the legal structure is something you should pay attention to. And it's weirdly enough not something that the media covers or pays attention to all that much. It's indefensible. Sometimes looting is necessary in some situations. No, come on, dude. I'm actually telling you that looting is indefensible while simultaneously telling you why mainstream media doesn't pay attention to the real, ginormously consequential looting that happens under the watchful eye of the legal structure, especially if it's done for profit. It's easy to go after small fish, a lot harder when it's a whale. No, I think there's a more nefarious purpose behind that, because we are so conditioned into expecting corporations to behave at the behest of profit that all of that stuff is completely legal, even when it's technically illegal. Like price gouging is illegal. It's something that people should pay close attention to and wonder why the media doesn't actually prime you in that direction and consistently reshifts your attention over to the individual looters, making it seem like it's a far larger problem. Because out of the 12,000 structures that burned down, many of the people that owned those houses are going to be impacted by significantly larger sums of money. I'll give you an example. A looter goes into a random home in a neighborhood that is burned down to steal jewelry. This is a completely unacceptable and gross act. Okay, that person is capable of, let's say, stealing upwards of $100,000 worth of jewelry. In the most extreme example that I can give you, in the most extreme hypothetical that I can give you that would favor the argument of like hyper focusing on random looters. Down the street, there are houses that are burned to the ground. Those houses, let's say, are at least $3 to $5 million. Those lots are purchased by private equity for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. The penalty in that regard, the theft that took place in that regard, is initially conducted by the insurance company that denies your claims. Let's say they don't give you the price of all of the goods that you lost. They never do. That's how they generate profit. Also, on top of that, they don't give you money to rebuild. Okay, so there's at least a couple $100,000 that was shaved by the insurance company. A couple $100,000 that were stolen by the insurance company right there for something that you paid for that you are not going to be able to get. Then on top of that, because now you're in a dire financial predicament and your house is burned into ashes and you have no confidence that you can rebuild it ever again, now you got other opportunists coming in to basically take the land out of your hands. Let's say your house was $3.5 million. They're trying to purchase it at a price point at like $700,000. Now the penalties incurred, the theft that has taken place in one singular home in this neighborhood, the damage done to one singular family in this neighborhood as a direct consequence of this wildfire is in the millions. That's one house. There are 12,000 structures that burn to the ground. And this situation is going to play itself out 12,000 times. The number of the true theft and the real looting that will take place in the aftermath of the rebuilding process that is long, complicated, and obviously litigation will have to take place as well to claw back every single dollar that you technically paid for, is to the tune of billions. So one must ask themselves why everyone is so primed into thinking about the one guy that stole, let's say, upwards of $100,000 worth of jewelry, as opposed to the hundreds of billions potentially, if not at least, in the most conservative estimate, tens of billions of dollars that were stolen from the hundreds of thousands of people that have suffered major emotional and financial loss in the aftermath of this natural disaster. Think about that. Think about where our priorities lie. Think about why mainstream media covers one aspect of the situation a lot more than they cover the other serialized, systematized form of looting. One is considered the normal machinations of the free market. The other is obviously a criminal element. A lot of people look at this, the system that we exist under, and think like, no, this is normal. A lot of people are skeptical of mainstream media narratives. And yet, for some reason, they never exercise that healthy skepticism when it matters, getting duped by mainstream narratives in this regard because they feed into your reactionary tendencies. Everyone understands that the person who dresses up like a firefighter to go into a house that hasn't been burned down to steal stuff is an evil person. Okay, everybody understands that, but you never consider the faceless, systematized form of looting that takes place that actually damages a far larger chunk of the population with awards that are upwards of tens of billions of dollars. That's the real looting. And yet, that's also not the real looting that you ever hear about. You rarely ever hear about it in comparison to the looting conducted by individuals. That's simply all I'm saying. Ask yourself why. There's another aspect of the looting that I didn't even mention, which is price gouging. In the process of you trying to rebuild your house, you also need a place to live. And the existing supply of housing market went down and the demand went up. Now you got at least 12,000 single family homes, or even more than that because it's structures. So there's apartment buildings as well. There are tens of thousands of new rental units that are an absolute necessity for survival. People need shelter to exist. People need shelter. They have jobs. They have to be in the approximate neighborhood of where they used to live. And here it is. While Despite the fact that there is a law against price gouging, prices have spiked on some LA rentals as fire victims search for places to stay. Some rental listings have shot up above the allowable 10% overnight. I've seen increases of 100%, chat. 100%. And people look to this and go, well, that's normal market conditions. No, it's not. You can say that about price gouging across the board, always. Smaller landlords tend to do stuff like this because they don't know the laws. Okay, first of all, if you think that this is just smaller landlords doing stuff like this, let me tell you, okay, you're wrong. Also, ignorance to the law does not change the dynamic of doing something that is, one, morally repugnant, and two, illegal. Is there even a mechanism of enforcement of this type of price gouging? Yes, you can report price gougers to the prosecutor's office, I believe. But here's the other side of the story. If the media was consistently focusing on this, the real looting that is occurring with a dollar value significantly higher than whatever a singular looter could potentially steal from a house. And if you had a competent district attorney that actually cared about defending victims of a natural disaster, then they would get the word out. And this wouldn't be relegated to TikTok and random people trying to engage in grassroots initiatives to try and report people to their local prosecutor's office. That's it. Like, it's crazy that because the system is so broken that it genuinely requires people to take matters in their own hands. Here's an example of such.
Hi everyone, tutorial on how to find and report predatory Los Angeles landlords who are taking advantage of fire victims and jacking up their prices. Anyone can do this. You don't need to live in the Los Angeles area. All you have to do is go to one of the rental websites like Zillow or Trulia and scroll through listings in the Los Angeles area and look for rental history. My dog wanted me to check this listing out, so I scrolled down to the bottom to look at the rental history, and oh look, this listing was increased by $2,500 a month on the second day of the devastating fire.
How much you want to bet they'll pressure Zillow and Altrulia to no longer show previous rental history numbers or something? It's probably not going to work, obviously. But if I'm in charge of big landlord, that is what I would try to do to try and hide this crime in an effort to combat against this kind of, mass reporting.
That is a price gouge. They are obviously trying to take advantage of people who have lost their homes and need a place to stay. This is my spreadsheet that I'm keeping track of everything. And yeah, anything more than 10% is illegal. So unfortunately for them, we will be reporting them to the Attorney General's office, and they could face fines and jail time. So we will be reporting them. There's a form that you can fill out. Happy hunting. Honestly, these people are predatory, and
who the F can afford this, bro? 7K? Brother, 7K is actually a 56% increase, which is above the legal limit. Like significantly above the legal limit. But what's really funny about that is that 7K is nothing. There's properties in Los Angeles that were $15,000 under quote unquote normal market conditions, and now they're going for $30,000 a month. I can't send the link, but FEMA actually created this atmosphere in Maui after the fires. They were offering something like $11K a month for 2 bedrooms for survivors, and it was pricing out people who were there before the fire. That's probably coming to until Trump fucks it up. But it's crazy. Like I said, yet another reason why they want to ban TikTok. But it's interesting to think, it's really sad when you think about it, that all of these issues are left to individuals who take matters in their own hands. Like, there's just a competent government would immediately ensure that there is a rental price freeze. That's what you would do. You would say, hey, by the way, tough times. Okay, sorry to all the big landlords and small mom and pop landlords, but you're not allowed to increase your rental prices. That is crazy. What do you mean? You want to behave like an opportunist? Like, what the hell are you doing? No, you're not allowed to do that. We're doing a price freeze on rent. That way, the additional FEMA funds and resources that come in to the victims are not being used to price out the existing people that need places to live in as well.